Hi guys, welcome back to Oru Kural. Today we're joined with the lovely guest Suja. If you want to introduce yourself.
I don't know really what to say about me. I am Suja. I am a special needs teacher, a Senko, and I am also a qualified life coach.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Today's very much in theme. Today we're going to be discussing a bit about mental health and stigma. So, let's start with a question of how did you get into life coaching? Tell us a bit about your story.
To be fair, the life coaching kind of came about because I was absolutely exhausted from the teaching aspect of it.
Fair enough.
I'd been teaching for over 10 years. I was assistant head at a school for children with autism.
Okay.
I don't know if you know much about special needs, but depending on the school that you're at, you can, get very burnt out very, very quickly. An assistant head at that kind of school meant I was getting bruised and battered on a daily basis. Including hospital trips because I'd been bitten, and it was stressful, but it was what I kind of wanted to do. So I'm stubborn, and so I continued to do it. However, when COVID hit, 2020 obviously hit, I just got to a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like it was just genuinely so difficult. I also got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which is like a chronic pain and fatigue condition.
Okay.
Exasperated by stress. So stress makes it worse.
Okay.
And I just thought, I wasn't even 40 at the time. I think I was like 37. And I was just like, I need to figure out something else. So I ended up just taking a break, actually. My dad also died a couple of months after I decided to take a break from teaching. And I was just not in a place to do anything. So I kind of took a step back from teaching full time, went into tutoring for the local authority and stuff like that. And I thought, let me do something that I actually just want to do. I thought about kind of training to become a counsellor, but the thing with me is I'm very empathetic, so I was stressed that was going to cause me more stress, and I thought, okay, no, I can't do that. Like, it's just I knew I wasn't going to be able to save everyone, as it were. So I figured, okay, what else can I do with the I guess the skills I already had. And so ended up doing a qualification because us Tamils are very good at getting the qualifications that we need.
So then from that, you then decided to help other people with what specifically do you kind of life coach on, I guess?
So I think as my own growth journey or healing journey has kind of happened, it's chopped and changed a bit, but it's very much about empowering South Asian women, kind of just be a bit more aligned with who they are, kind of, find their voice, not be so kind of bogged down by societal expectations. And it's very much about kind of going, this is who I am, regardless of who, my mum says I should be, or my uncle says I should be, or my children, or my siblings, any of them say I should be. This is who I am and who I want to be, and this is what I'm going to do about it.
Very in line with what we want to promote on the Korea, so that's great.
Yes.
So I guess before we start, I guess we should learn a bit more about your story. What kind of led you to, because I think it's such a nice message to want to empower South Asian women, especially because even in our own experiences, we know the kind of stigmas we face. We know how hard it is to speak up about things. Me and Ovia find this all the time whenever we talk about, really stigmatized, trivial topics. We get side eyes and we get judgments, but it's a choice that we make, and it's a big thing that we do to be like, I don't really care what you say. Luckily, we have support, but I know a lot of people don't. So what kind of led you to be like, I know you talked a bit about the career experiences, but what kind of personal experiences led you to be like, I'm going to start living for myself? Because I think it's very inspiring that you choose to do that anyways.
I think for me, I was born in Germany. My parents obviously left just before the war started in Sri Lanka.
Okay.
I was born in Germany. I came to England when I was 3, but I always, Appa never let us forget that we were Tamil, and obviously, Appa lived in like 80s Sri Lanka. So even though Sri Lanka had moved on, Appa didn't, and I think a lot of our parents don't, and the elders don't, and it was very much that thing of I was stuck between the Western culture and the Tamil culture, where it was, I wanted to be a bit freer with with who I was, and be kind of able to express how I am, etc. But I grew up in a family that that my parents worked very, very hard, and all the hours that the universe sent, my parents were working, and I think for me it was just a thing that I just didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. It was that thing of white people, I guess, or people here would say, go back to your own country, especially back in the 80s. It was very very kind of racist back then. Go back to your own country. And then I remember I kind of went to Sri Lanka, and they automatically turned around and they were like, where are you really from? You're not from here. And I remember thinking, well, where am I meant to be? Where where am I kind of putting myself? And then when I had my kids as well, it became even more kind of important for me to kind of know where I was, I guess, so that I could teach my kids where they were. But unfortunately, because I didn't really know, and because I'm only now, I guess, understanding who I am, and regardless of whether I'm white or Tamil or from Sri Lanka or from England or whatever, my kids have kind of gone totally the other way. They don't even see themselves as Tamil. I'm kind of like, you are brown, guys.
Yeah.
And they're just like, yeah, whatever. But it's something that I did because I kind of tried to keep them away, I guess, from the judgment and from our people. And and it's as unfortunate as it is, and I know a lot of people in my generation and a lot of people in your generation and younger, I think you're a lot better now at kind of not turning around and going, well, actually, you're not one of us. And I don't think my kids actually see it as whether we're Tamil or not, but I felt it,
of course,
and I didn't want that for them, and I kept them away from it as much as I possibly could.
I mean, this is so interesting because this is what I did my whole dissertation on, renegotiating identities. So I think we really put a focus on second generation identities and how hard it is to navigate. I think regardless of, obviously context dependent, like you said, it was very racist time during like the 80s and stuff. Even with us, sometimes it's hard because like I didn't grow up specifically around Tamils either. And one thing that really put me away, even to this day, is, like you said, the judgment. But I would hate to have to sacrifice a part of my identity that I actually should pay homage to, because I think of all the sacrifices, like you said, I feel like that's part of the second generation. It's carrying that burden of, I'm so grateful for everything you've done. And also being like, but I don't fit in completely with this, and I was born in a Western world, which means I have different ideals, I have different desires, I maybe not be so family centric as you might want me to, things like that. So I think that definitely plays a part in, first of all, how you identify, but that has a massive impact on how we view things like stigma and mental health.
But in fairness, especially with our within our South Asian community or the Tamil community, it's actually the other way around.
Really?
They will have full-on depression where they can't get out of bed, they can't focus, but one, they've got to kind of get up and do it, because for whatever reason, it's you've got a job, you've got kids, whatever, and also because we don't actually know any different. We've not been told ever, if you're having a bad day, stay in bed. That's not a thing. And so they kind of just almost assume that it's normal to feel like everything's going against you, when actually it's not.
It is, but I think even this thing of perseverance is such a cultural specific thing, and I never realized this until, like I said, even though I didn't grow up with a lot of Tamils, because I was always at home and I was always surrounded by my family, the perseverance aspect was always around me. So when I would like go to college and university, and I met like a lot of white or a lot of middle class families, and I realized that they would say things like, or like even when I started work, take a day off, call in sick, or I'm not going to do this, I'm going to push my deadline. For me, that's like shocking. Like, what do you mean? And I think it's just a cultural thing of like, we just do things as they are because we have to. It's not in any way I'm trying to criticize it, because I think it's good to be like, encourage us to be organized, but I think it's to the point of, we normalize burnout so much. Every single Tamil kid I know gets burnt out. Like I regret so much not doing a gap year, because I feel like I burnt out at the end of my degree. But I know so many other people that felt like they did take it, but they got so much stigma in the gap year. They were like, oh, so what are you doing with your life now? So you're just staying at home.
Yeah.
So you're just working part-time in a retail place.
Yeah.
You're not actually paying attention to your life. You're wasting away. So I think it's like finding this balance of, that's when you need to learn to tune out the voices. Because it's like, for yourself, you need to be able to, you know, I'm going to sleep in.
I think with me, it was only after I got my diagnosis of fibro that I kind of understood the importance of rest, because I thought, if I keep doing this, I'm going to die very early. And I think that was enough to kind of make me think, okay, do you know what? Health comes first, regardless of anything else. But it took me a long time to kind of get to that point. And there are still days when I feel guilty about it, especially in the job that I'm in. It's that thing of, if I don't go to work, then, you know, what happens with the kids? And, you know, because I'm a Senko, then, you know, all these meetings need to be pushed back. And I was just like, that kind of causes more, kind of aggravation and upset for me, because I'm like, so many people end up getting put out because
there's all this pressure on you.
So that's kind of where.
But it's crazy you had to drive yourself to diagnosis.
Yes.
What do you think? Why do you think a lot of people don't go to counselling? What do you think the barriers are?
One, it's that thing of stigma, 100%. Two, it's the cost, because they're fine with buying a new sari or going out drinking with their friends or, you know, anything along those lines. But actually kind of going out to someone specifically to kind of talk to them about how you're feeling, well, that's just ridiculous, because surely you can go to your mum and dad for a chat, or like, you know, your chitty or your chitty, you know, someone along those lines, and they're going to give you the best advice. They don't understand, actually, it's not about getting advice. It's literally just kind of going.
Licensed help, I think.
It's exactly. It's very different.
I think as well, I would say a lot of stigma, like a lot of barriers for mental health, like getting counselling and stuff, is also just assuming that people don't understand when they're not. And I think especially when having a counsellor that doesn't come from your background, I think that's why it's so nice to have people that are willing to listen, like yourself, that resemble yourself, and you know that they would understand where you're coming from.
Strangely though, my experience was very different. So my counsellor is white, and I mean, like, you know, she's gone traveling and everything, and she's been to Sri Lanka and stuff. But I mean, like, we'll come into the fact that I'm separated in a bit. But I actually tried marriage counselling with my ex, and we went to a Tamil woman. And
this I can imagine.
So we went to a Tamil lady, because my ex is from Sri Lanka, so because of the language barrier, etc., we went to a Tamil lady, and I just kept saying, like, I can't see a way forward, like I'm struggling, like I'm really, you know, like I don't know what to do. And I said, I think I need to leave. And she turned around and she said, well, I don't believe in divorce.
Oh.
And I was like,
okay.
Oh. I was like, after that, I had no idea what to say to her. I mean, like, you know, she is meant to be like this, you know, just like non-committal, non-judgmental person that was meant to just kind of have my back regardless. But it's, I don't believe in divorce. And I was like, I don't know what to say to you here.
Professional. Was she actually?
She was. Okay. She was a qualified
was she like a broker that your mom suggested?
No, okay. I found her on like the other. But no, I was so taken aback, because, you know, like, as it is, right, like, I've gone to a professional because I can't speak to people I know about how much I'm struggling in my marriage. And for her to give me that judgment, like, it took me a long time to be able to kind of come back from this random woman's judgment, because it's bad enough when your own family give you judgment, right? But at least then you're like, well, they've known me, you know, for a long time. Maybe they see something that I don't. But this woman, I'm meant to be. No,
that's the thing though. Counselling. That's the thing though. Counselling is meant to be someone. I think that's why it's so good, is because it's a third party. Yeah. They don't know. Like, they're not there to fix your life. They're there to kind of listen to everything and help you, like, see things a bit clearer. And I think that's why it's always like, even if you go to your friends or your family, they will always have some form of a biased view about 100%. Things. For example, if you've had a falling out with a friend, depending on what relationship they have with a friend, or if you're in a relationship and you go to someone and you say, you know, that your friend has a bad view of your partner, they will give you advice that
Yeah.
they think is right for you, not what is right for you,
Yeah.
what they think would be right for you. So I think that's why we should encourage it more. I can't believe your therapist. I'm actually shocked by that. This is
That's why I was
professional.
always just like, does culture actually matter?
Wow, board of ethics. Yeah, but then that's good, I guess.
Yeah, it was just, it kind of taught me a lot, that kind of specific experience. Yeah, definitely. I was just like, wow, okay, I'm not coming back to you.
I think also with barriers as well, it's also just generally, I think, encouraging speaking about things regardless. I feel like it's not, we've touched on like how guys don't obviously speak up a lot and things like that, but I think even more than that, I don't feel like a lot of ethnic women in general, they like to share their burden, they like to carry it, and it's all, and I think it comes down to this whole thing of like you're such a strong, confident woman. Like one of my best friends was talking about how she hates the stereotype of being a strong black woman, because it's the most like awful thing to have over your head, because you are forced to be that. If you turn around and you say, I'm struggling with my mental health, or I'm struggling with this, oh, but you're a strong black woman, you can't think like that. And it's like, you're meant to be a strong, woman of color, breaking these barriers, and it's like, I have to bear this pressure on me, which, this is why intersectional feminism is so important, because we have such different experiences. I don't think a white counterpart or a white friend of mine would understand how that feels, to have this thing of, you're such a strong, like, you're a boss bitch, you're such a bad, you're a bad bitch. I'm so sick and tired of hearing that. I can imagine when someone isn't so progressive that they wouldn't. So I would imagine how hard it is not having a safe haven at home, not having somewhere to go to. And that's when it's like, I guess your only option is to go to counselling, but then it's so expensive. So what do you do for that?
I think for me, like I said, I think I just got to a point where I realised the holding on and the not having someone to talk to, as it were, what a detriment it had to my physical health, as well as, it started off purely as like a mental health thing, but when it started having such a detriment to me physically, it was like, okay, I had no option here. I've got to pay the money and kind of look after myself, because I'm the oldest of 3 girls. I very much kind of kept things to myself because it was just easier for starters. My Amma, I guess, kind of understood it, but she was so busy working that she didn't really have the kind of the time nor the space to kind of sit down with us and have the conversations. Whereas Appa would just like, ni lose, no, and that was immediate. It was,
Shut down.
Yeah, shut down. There was nothing, I was not paithium according to Appa, and well, but
no, but that's the thing.
That was the thing. That I was just like, that's not what it means.
Yeah, you spoke a bit about being separated and like how your family weren't as receptive as when you thought your counsellor would have been. How was that experience, I guess, in both for you impacting your mental health, but also kind of how you were received and the stigma you received during that time?
So I separated from my ex last year, so just over a year now, after 20 years of marriage. So it wasn't like, a decision I made on the whim or anything like that. Yeah. My kids at the time were 18 and 14. So it was that thing of...
You look so young. Sorry. This is shocking to me. I
was married at 19. Okay. I turned 40 last year. I'm 41 now. So, I think it just got to a point where I just couldn't keep going in the way that I had. So just a bit about me kind of beforehand. So 3 girls, oldest of 3. Appa was our everything. Like, Appa was the man, and he did it to all 3 of us, including my sisters, and to his wife, in fairness. We'd get a, morning 7 o'clock phone call. Are you on your way to work yet? Have you eaten something? Have you had tea? Oh. Usually on the way back from work, I'd ring him to kind of go, oh, I'm on my way home now. And I literally live like 10 minutes away from, home. But in that time, I'd ring him. He'd ring me again in the evening to kind of see if the kids had eaten, if I'd eaten, So that's who my dad was. And then he died very suddenly from COVID, during COVID. And I think that's when I truly understood what it meant like to feel like to be alone. I was married, and, you know, like I said, I'd been married to him for a long time. Right from the beginning, it wasn't like, you know, it was kind of an assisted marriage. My aunts introduced us. I was just like, yeah, okay, why not? Seemed like a sensible thing to do when you're 19 years old.
Yeah, I was gonna come back to that. Being 19, I'm 21 now. I can't imagine her going, like, how was that?
I think when you don't really know any different, right?
Fair
It's
enough.
you know, you kind of just go with it. And for me, I kind of, yeah, I think for me, I kind of thought, well, maybe I will have kind of someone to kind of look out for the best interests of me,
Yeah.
being the oldest. That, you know, and I don't think he, you know, I never want to badmouth him, because at the end of the day, he is the father of my boys, right? But we just weren't compatible.
Of course.
He was 8 years older than me, was born and brought up in Sri Lanka. He'd literally come to England like 2.5 years before we got married.
Okay.
Displaced in the war, you know, caught by the army, done, you know, and
All of that.
an alcoholic.
Okay.
You know, and all of those things, because of, you know, the environment that I was in, and because of the type of person that I am, I kind of felt like I gave it a lot of space. You know, you're an alcoholic because of the, you know, the displacement, because, you know,
You make excuses.
I
for
made
other
excuses,
people.
and I made excuses for a long time. But when the kids were younger, it was a lot easier to make those excuses, because I'd make the excuse and then turn around and I had 2 babies to look after. But as they grew older, you know, like I said, they became 18 and 14, and it became a lot harder for me to turn around and kind of even find them, because, you know, one was out with his mates and the other one was in his room gaming. And that's when I sat there and I thought, this could be the rest of my life, because I'm going to have no one to speak to. I'm going to have to pay £50 a session for counselling forever in a day, because I'm going to have no one that I can actually just bounce off.
Yeah.
And I think I just got to a point where I thought, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And then it was literally a month before my 40th birthday last June. And just the idea of spending another 20, 30, 40 years, I thought, I can't. I genuinely can't. And with that came a suicide attempt. I tried to take my life in June, literally like 5 days after my 40th last year. And
This was before you decided to get a divorce.
no, I'd told him I'd wanted one. He was kind of saying that there was, you know, absolutely no issues with our marriage, as most men would say.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, there's nothing kind of wrong, and I was like, but I can feel that nothing's right at the moment. I was like, I didn't make a decision
It's the gut instincts
lightly,
when you,
right? And also the fact that I had waited 20 years to kind of go, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Should have given off an alarm bell somewhere. But yeah, so I made an attempt on my life. My friend had rung me at literally, I think she'd rung me to kind of go, are you okay? Something doesn't feel right. And I think I was blabbering by this point, and she'd kind of said, did you eat? And I said, yeah. And she said, what? And I told her, you know, however many painkillers I'd taken. So then my sisters came, my cousins came, they took me to the hospital. You know, they just waited for the drugs to kind of come out of the system and whatnot. And I think I came home the next day and thought, I've got to leave, because I can't do that again. Not only for me, because I thought, why do I need to try and kill myself? Like, you know, I can just very easily just turn around and say, I don't want to do this anymore. And also the fact that I had 2 kids, and the fact that I'd kind of put them through that, obviously was very kind of guilt-inducing as a mother.
Course,
so I was like, right. And so I just turned around and I said, I'm leaving now. I think up until that point, it was, you know, how do I go? He wouldn't leave, because it was like, there's nothing wrong. So I'm going to stay in our house. I didn't know anything else, because 20 years of, you know, I'd spent more time married to him than I had with my parents. So
yeah, I can't believe you stuck with it. That's perseverance. I feel like
exactly.
20 years though.
I'd spent more time with him. And so like my entire life was wrapped up in his, you know, be it the house, be it his business, be it our kids. So I was like, okay, what do I do? And then I turned around and I said to my kids, like, I can't stay anymore. Like, genuinely, this is getting to the point where this is just ridiculous. Like, I would never have done this. Yeah. And they turned around and they said, well, Mum, we don't really want to leave the house that we've known, that we grew up in. And so then not only did I become, to the outside world, that, you know, the girl, the woman that left her husband, I then became the woman that left her kids as well, which I think hit me in more ways than it did me leaving my husband. I think people could have understood that, but the fact that the kids chose to stay in the house was like.
But I think this is, it always makes me upset, is that as a mother, you just need to be constant sacrifices. Yeah. Like the fact that you even preface this whole conversation by saying, I stayed for 20 years because I have 2 boys. How old were they when you decided? It was recent. So
yeah, it was last year. So they were 18 and 14.
Okay.
Because they're now 19 and nearly 16. So yeah. But I think for me, because I was always very open with my kids with regards to, you know, be it my physical health or my mental health or how I was feeling, etc. I'm like, I had to be. They were my best friends in the house. That's because, so you know, I didn't, he wasn't there. So I think they always knew that Mum wasn't happy. And, you know, and now they will say, you know, we don't understand how you kind of, you know, what you kind of had in common type thing. We know that, especially the older mum will say, you don't have anything in common with Dad apart from us.
Yeah. And I think that's the case with so many people that do get married young like that. And it's just because of convenience. You get married and then you don't have anything in common with the kids.
And also you grow, right? I mean, like you said, you're 21. Like my son's 19. I just turn around and I'm like, that's like you getting married now, babes. Like in 3 years time, you're going to go, why am I married to this person for?
Because you experience so many things within this. Like, I think every month I learn something new about myself, and then I'm uncovering things. There's so many things I haven't experienced. So I sit there and I'm actually like shell shocked that you were married at 19.
Yeah, at your age I had a child.
Oh God.
But with regards to kind of the stigma that came across, I think for me it was more the stigma that I felt that people were kind of saying, you know, the shade that they were throwing towards me as a mother.
People actually giving you shade?
Yeah, people actually gave me shade. And it was more, they, you know, like I said, they could say whatever they wanted about me and my ex, because I was like, you know what, at the end of the day, if that's all you see or want to see or want to talk about, then you can go ahead and, you know, and obviously I'm going to be the baddie in this situation. It's always easy to blame the girl. And also I didn't want to go around saying anything, so I was quite happy. But it was when they threw shade at me as a mum, because I felt for me that's my core are my kids, regardless of whether I live with them or not. My kids know that I didn't leave them. So I think that really upset me at the beginning, because I was like, how can you say any of these things about, you know, and it wasn't just, you know, friends, family members said it as well, and it was close family members as well. That, you know, there was lots of judgment, lots of voices that were kind of like, how can you do this? What kind of mother are you? And I had to really, really dig deep and kind of go, hold on, you have no position to talk about what I am going through, because the number of times actually in the past I have rung and cried about something not quite working in my marriage, and you've kind of gone, oh, don't worry, it's just like, no, it wasn't. So I think it's after that,
brushing problems under the carpet,
100%,
which is what I think we're really good at doing.
We're very good at doing that. Yes. Because, you know, we're quite happy to watch like all these Tamil Nadahams where all of this stuff is happening, and we will be so upset that, you know, so and so has run off with so and so on some drama, but in real life, you know, it's so it was just, the stigma is real. And I think for me, I think over the past year especially, I kind of just became so vocal about my mental health and, you know, the mental health of others and etc., because I thought as someone who was born and brought up here and knows the language and technically had the words to use, I still didn't, because I'd been told for so long or taught for so long that actually girls should be seen and not heard.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's taken me a long time to now go, no, I have a voice, and I'm not always, forthcoming in using it. I'm getting better at getting.
And I think what's interesting is that you said, I don't care, that you don't care about the stigma. Like, it's not necessarily, because a lot of people say that more so than what people actually say, they imagine that people would say that. I think that's what a lot of my generation is, that they're like, I'm scared what people would think. But you actually experienced those things. And I think from watching you and the other Boomer auntie who we had for the single mother episode, is that both of you have developed this, I'm going to live for myself attitude of I don't care. And I think as women, that's what we have to do, and eventually you get better at it. I don't think you ever get perfect, because it's hard to ignore it. And again, it's only been a year for you, but I think you start to experience it and you start thinking, I'm going to live for myself. Even I do, like at 21, what do I have to be like? But even things that you get critiqued on and criticized on, so at a point I started just being like, these people don't pay my rent.
Yeah.
They don't pay for anything, and like my food, they don't look after me, they're not there when I'm down. So why should I care about their opinions?
Yeah.
Even if you're a close family member, even if you've given me money for my something, whatever it is, I don't feel like we owe anyone anything, except I owe to myself. Yeah. And if something's going to make me happy, I'm not going to stop doing it. Yeah. As long as it doesn't harm other people, I don't see why there's critique. So I think what you said is very interesting, because it is about, there's a lot of pressure to develop this, this girl can, I can attitude. But it does break you, I think, because it's never perfect. No. There's dips, always.
Yeah, it's never smooth sailing. And I think one thing I am not, and I think I don't want to be ever, is that harsh kind of, kind of bitchy persona that other people might, have with their barriers and whatnot. And yes, I have my barriers, but I'm also, who I am to my core is I am a nice person. I will go out of my way to help you. I will check in on you if I feel like, you're going through a bad time. And that is who I am. Yeah. And I feel like what that does sometimes is people think, oh, we can walk all over her. We can tell her what to say. We can tell her what to do. And it's been interesting, because I've tried to kind of keep that while still kind of being able to put up boundaries and saying, yes, I'm nice, but that doesn't mean you can play with my feelings or say what you want about me, because I still am not going to take it. But yeah, unfortunately, you kind of look around and, especially with the older, like Tamil community, especially, the older aunties, etc. And so many of them are bitter. For whatever reason, and I'm not saying, the reasons is because, our community has said you should be this or you should be that, or, do this or do that. And we have kind of just given them that space. And this is where all the things like Pythium and all of that other stuff comes from, because, it's that thing of, we almost goad them into that kind of behavior. Yeah. Like, we don't allow women, that thing that went all over like TikTok and YouTube, that soft girl era. We don't have that.
We don't.
Like, what the hell?
You know how you say you don't live with your kids anymore, right?
Yes.
Do you feel like the stigma that you get of being a bad mother, because you said you do get, I guess, slagged off for that, does that kind of put you away from, like, do you go to like functions, like functions where all the gossip starts happening and all the gossip starts, do you not go to them anymore? Do you cut yourself off from it?
To be fair,
like spaces, I guess.
Yeah, I cut myself off from a lot of the Tamils, family wise. Yeah. Not for any particular reason as such. I think, like I said, a lot of them I got backlash from. Yeah, when I even said that I was leaving him. There was kind of like, maybe you should try this and maybe you should try that. And I said, I can't really try any more. Yeah. Like, come on.
So I think I've tried. I don't want
exactly.
to be
do you know what I mean?
Position.
And I think what people fail to understand is when you get to that point of, I genuinely just don't care. Yeah. That means you're tried out. There's nothing that, you could have told me that he was going to, you know, win the lottery, and I still would have gone, it's okay, you can keep it, I'm leaving now. And I think people seem to not get that. And, you know, there was a lot of, you know, we'll get him to change, but, you know, we'll talk to him, you know, you can try this and you can try that. And I said, I don't want to.
Yeah.
That was it. It was literally, I don't want to anymore.
And sometimes that's a good enough reason.
Exactly. I said, I've tried it all, even counselling.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't want to do it, you know, do any of that stuff anymore. And I think a lot of my family found that difficult. A lot of my friends found it difficult that I, you know, just refused, you know, in their thing of, you know, I was upsetting a perfectly good apple cart, you know, and they could never see what was wrong because, by, you know, all
you created this perfect family.
Yeah, you know, all other accounts, you know, we were this perfect couple. He was absolutely amazing, you know. Abba died of COVID in like November 2020. So, you know, they were like...
That's when it first came up.
It was just after, I think it was like the second kind of in the run up to second lockdown, the Christmas, right? And I think for me, that was where it really kind of hit home with life is incredibly short. I mean, Abba was 63, you know, he was still going to, he was going to retire in 2 years' time, and he was going to, you know, he always used to joke that he'd sit at home and cook for my mum, and my mum would go to work and come home, and, you know, but she'd have food ready.
Yeah.
And he never got to do any of those things because he was so busy running around. And then obviously he worked in petrol stations. Exactly. And then getting COVID, and then he died, and then that was it. And then it was that thing of, I'm not having that. Whether I die today or 20 years down the line.
Yeah, I have a fulfilled life.
I want a fulfilled life. Yeah. And I think for me, I did the whole, you know, going out and getting drunk. Yeah. Using, you know, alcohol to kind of fix those holes that I thought, but I could see that those holes weren't being fixed. They were literally just being papered over. And then the next time I was sober, which was the next morning, I was just like, darn it. Yeah. Which is why I think, you know, January 2021 was when I was like, right, I need to now take myself seriously, and I need to sit there, and as difficult as it is, and it was very difficult at the beginning. I hated counselling because I was like, oh God, what else are you going to bring up today?
Yeah, and how are you going to criticize me now?
Exactly. And you know, it was there was so much to unearth, because it was literally 37 years of trauma that I'd built up. That I hadn't been willing to talk to anyone about. Trauma that, you know, even like last week in counselling, I kind of mentioned something. She was like, you've never said this before. And I was like, oh, okay. But, you know, there's still things that kind of come up. But now I'm now at a point where I know it's there. I just don't want to deal with it at this very precise moment in time. I know I'm dealing with other things. But I think it was straight after Abba dying and, you know, my diagnosis, Abba's death, that I sat there and I thought, truly, like, I am the only person that I can count on in that aspect of I need to put my mental health first. That's no fault of anyone else, you know. When you raise your kids, or when you have kids and when you raise them, you want them to, you know, ultimately look after themselves first. I would have been very upset if my kids had turned around and said, Mum, we want to solely look after you to the detriment of ourselves, because that's never how I've raised them. I've always kind of raised them to be themselves first and to look out for themselves first, you know, regardless of whether it's to my detriment or to my ex's detriment or to whoever, you know. I want this as my kids, I want them to look out for each other, but I want them to look out for themselves first, because I can do what I can do, but I'm not always going to be there. Yeah. And I think with me, I've also sat there and thought, I can't put all of my kind of hopes and dreams and, you know, everything else on my kids and kind of go, you are the sole reason for my living. Because at one point or another, they're going to go off, you know, they're going to get into relationships, go to work and everything else. And I'm getting older. I've got to, you know, and I've got to kind of go, I need to heal to be able to kind of grow in the way that I want to grow. Yeah.
That's another thing. You have to be able to be uncomfortable.
Because growing up, obviously, as the oldest of three girls, and my sisters are a few years younger than me, so one's 7 years younger than me, the other one's 9 years younger than me. And growing up, whenever I got into trouble, my dad's first thing would be, you can't speak to your sisters anymore because, like, you know, you mess up and then by extension, your sisters are going to be kind of tarred with that brush, right? And if you mess up and if you're naughty, then people are going to assume your sisters are naughty, and they're going to assume, you know, and then your sisters can't get married. So I do think one of the main reasons I stayed for 20 years is because my sister got married last year, my youngest. And I left in June.
You still carried that with you?
I carried it, and I remember, no word of a lie, I remember the day she got married, I just looked at her and just breathed, because I thought, if you F it up now, that's on you.
So now that you've stepped away from the situation, are you in a place where now you feel like in your day-to-day life you're seeing that you're putting yourself first, you're making these decisions, you're living unapologetically?
Yeah, 100%. I think the only two people that I even think that I kind of might have to explain myself are my kids. And even with them, I've outrightly kind of said to them, like, I love you, and my love for you is unconditional.
Of course.
However, there will be times when mum will do things or say things that you won't necessarily agree with, or you might not, you know, love me for, or whatever. But at the end of the day, I am kind of confident enough in my relationship with my kids for me to go, I can say things to you, not to outrightly hurt you, but to turn around and kind of go, what you've just said to me or what's happened to me is not okay. And I think even just kind of, especially with my older child, because at one point a few years ago, my older son turned to me and said, Mum, you do realise you never cry in front of me unless you're drunk. And so I think since then I've made it, I'm like, I still struggle. I mean, like, you know, I think it's a Tamil thing. I think it's a woman thing. I think it's an oldest child thing. Like,
It's
cannot,
the oldest child thing.
I cannot cry in front of anybody else. Like I used to, just as a side note, when Abba first died, I used to have counselling twice a week, because it was during those 2 hours that I would literally go cry and then, you know, wash my tears away, and then life went on. And then literally, you know, that's kind of how I did it, because I didn't want to cry in front of anyone else, and I didn't want to kind of have to go burden myself to anyone else. So now I kind of will say to my son, and kind of go, you know, this is absolutely shit, but I'm going to actually just voice it out to you and just let it go. And I think that vulnerability that I now have with my children, they've kind of accepted and kind of gone, okay, do you know what, Mum is not this robot that we potentially thought she was, because we thought that actually, you know, nothing could harm or nothing could upset Mum the way all of this stuff has. But they are the only two that I would even think of, kind of thinking of when I'm just like, how do I move forward? Majority of the time, even that, I'm just like, do you know what? They're kids, they're good kids, they're my kids. So I know that they have the resilience and the love for me, and I have for them, for it not to become like a long-term thing if something happens and we end up stopping talking to each other for whatever, you know, for whatever reason. But with anyone else, I'm like, none of you guys are paying my bills. None of you guys are there when I want to cry. None of you guys are even paying for my therapy. So what the hell?
So, I wanted to circle back to one point that you said that I think I wanted to include. You mentioned at the end of the day, the only person that will look out for you is yourself, right? How did you start being more comfortable with being alone, spending time with yourself? How did you become comfortable with being alone, solitary, you know, that kind of thing? Like, how do you be comfortable with that? I don't think I was ever as lonely as those 20 years I was married. So when I had someone technically by my side for 20 years, that was the loneliest I've ever felt. So for me, being by myself was absolutely, you know, at least then I didn't have that loneliness feeling. I was alone when I was going off for coffee by myself, or, you know, going for a walk by myself, but I didn't feel lonely. I was a lot happier. So I think knowing that, I was just kind of like, okay, it was just that realization, I think, for me was like, I'd much rather be alone rather than lonely with someone else or with the wrong person. Because I want to be able to say, like, I like this and I like that, but I can't do that until I spend time with myself and I nurture that relationship with myself. Because like you said, at the end of the day, I'm the only one that's going to know. But I know so many people, and even there's some parts of it myself that I don't know how to be okay with. doing that, what would your advice be for that?
I think that's where the actual sitting with yourself kind of really matters. And it's not going to be, you're going to do one guided meditation and the answers from the universe are going to appear. It's never going to be like that. We are ever evolving, right? Like you said, you might like something this week, this month, and next month you might not like it. So I think though, knowing that you are constantly changing and what works for you today might not work for you tomorrow, and kind of being okay with that, and actually going, okay, is there anything in particular that to the core of your being that will always kind of calm you, right? So for me, I know going to the sea is my happy place. I can just go, even if it's Southend, I can just go see the water, and something about it just calms me.
Oh, that's nice.
And I think just always having that in my back pocket, and kind of knowing, even if it's pouring down with rain, I know I can go there and
happy place,
and just just be able to kind of feel a sense of relief, a sense of happiness, a sense of control over things that are happening in my life. And I think that's really kind of important to kind of go, this is who I am at this very precise moment in time. And yes, playing the guitar might give you happiness today, but tomorrow you might turn around and get really annoyed with yourself that you can't play a particular song. So it's also kind of knowing that it's not always going to be a one size fits or
exactly
what's going to work today might not necessarily work tomorrow. And kind of being okay with that, and not giving yourself kind of grief because it's not worked. And I think we as human beings, we want to be perfect. We want to be perfect for other people. We want to be perfect for ourselves. But that's never going to be the case, because what does perfect even mean? Like, your idea of perfect is going to be very different to mine. It's going to be very different to your mum's. And it's kind of knowing that, and kind of going, right, okay, I'm going to have potentially like an arsenal of things that I could try, whether that be journaling, whether that be listening to music, whether that be going for a walk, any of those things. And one of them might work and one of them might not, or all of them might work, and that'd be, happy days. And if none of them work, then we need to figure out something that's just going to be like the crux, and kind of go, right, do you know what I mean?
So I feel like that was a really good conversation. If you had one piece of advice to give the kind of our viewers, what would you want to give them?
I think the main thing is what I said before, in the sense of you are kind of in charge of of your destiny, of your life. You only have one. That old adage about if you do it right once is enough, I think it holds very, very true. We don't know how long we have on this earth. I could die tomorrow. I could have another 40, 50 years. But my life is mine, and I refuse to let anybody else tell me how I should be living it, what I should be doing, or how I should be doing it, or who I should be doing it with. My thing of, as long as I'm not hurting anybody else, then what I do has got nothing to do with you. So I think that's really kind of, you're allowed to look out for yourself. You should be looking out for yourself, and without any guilt, because trust me, there's going to be, every Tom, Dick and Harry will want to make you feel guilty about the life that you're living. But just live your life unapologetically. Just kind of say, this has got nothing to do with you. You're not paying my bills. You're not looking after me. You are literally just someone that's on the periphery of my life. So I think that's kind of what you've really got to hold on to, whatever your age.
Yeah. I think that's such a nice thing to end on, actually. Very sums up the whole episode, I think. So if you didn't watch anything, just watch these last 2 minutes. But thank you guys so much for watching. Again, if you have anything you want to say on the podcast, come join. Please fill the form out. We will get back to you eventually, but we will. And yeah, we'll see you again for the next episode. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on as well.
Thank you so much.
Yes.